Hello, and welcome to the Lifeability Podcast. Today's episode is all about play and slowing down. Our guest speaker, Josh Piterman, is an established musical theatre performer and classical crossover artist who's worked consistently on Australian and global stages for over 15 years. His past credits include being part of the international pop opera group The Ten Tenors, Tony in the 2010 Australian production of The West Side Story, Bustopher Jones, Gus, Growltiger in the 2015-2016 Australian season of The Cats, a role that won him the Green Room Award for the Best Supporting Actor in a Musical. Corny Collins in the UK tour of Hairspray and Gerry Goffin in the 2017-2018 Australian tour of Beautiful, the Carole King Musical. His impressive West End debut came as he took on the most coveted role as the Phantom in The Phantom of the Opera in 2019, which he reprised at the Sydney Opera House and Arts Centre Melbourne in 2022 and 2023. He most recently returned to the West End to play the iconic role of Jean Valjean in Les Misérables at the Sondheim Theatre. Josh also provides one-on-one high performance and mindset coaching and is a keynote speaker and delivers various workshops. His power is the power that we all have, breath. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. I had a lot of fun recording the conversation, and as I was recording this introduction to Josh, I also just reflected on my morning, which is all about play at the beach, which I absolutely loved. So I would love to start off with your definition of play.
Yeah, my definition of play, what a great way to start. It's anything that brings you into the most expansive, joyful, blissful state that we can operate as humans. So it's any feeling that evokes that. And that can be different for different people, but it's a limitless, expansive space. And that's why I always say that our state of play is very much interconnected with this state of what we know in Sanskrit or in yoga terminology is Ananda, or the Anandamaya kosha, the sheath of the self that is most, Ananda meaning bliss, that is most blissful. So the definition has to be person specific, but it needs to invite that limitless, boundless joy. Because for some people, it could be being experimental or geeky or silly. For some people, it might be curiosity or creativity, or that is what play means to them. So it's about knowing what your most authentic state is, and that is your most blissful state, and then finding really the important part of play is not just going, oh, I play on the swings, or I play table tennis, or, I play when I do karaoke drunk. It's going, where in my life do I have resistance? Where do I have stagnation? Where does life feel a little tired and boring and just not working for me? And where can I bring that authentic, blissful, playful mindset to those areas? How can I bring it to those areas?
I've got a couple of things that have come up as you were speaking. The first one being, you mentioned authentic, blissful state. What is that?
That's what Ananda is. We know them as koshas. So it's our mental self, our physical self, our energetic self, the wisdom self, but behind the layer of all those is this layer of bliss. And before wounds and traumas and conditionings and responsibilities and all these things that were bestowed upon us or that we experienced in life got in the way of that blissful, authentic, playful, childlike self. Because a lot of this happens in these first sort of 7 to 10 years of our lives that we get wounded. We had this incredible experience of play, and of bliss and authenticity. Then it went away, well, it didn't go away, it was always there, but all these things got in the way of it. And so I always come back to this great Ram Dass quote that we're just leading each other home. We're all just leading each other home. And home is our most authentic state, our most blissful state. Certainly in form, and I always bring that up, that in our form, in our human self, because we can go into the formless, and that is this, consciousness or awareness or whatever you want to call it, soul, the deep spirit. Before we arrive into that, and it's a whole other topic, this is our most authentic state as in form, as a human being.
Yeah, so in pretty much in our physical form, right? What you're explaining, and going back to our authentic self. Something that came up for me when we went through that experience together, which I've never really experienced before, was this knowing of my body's actually holding on to a lot of terror, and didn't make sense to me at the time, because during the moments of those memories, they were really enjoyable memories. However, the post experiences of what that led to was then sort of the driving factor, I guess, for everything that was coming up in my brain. And then I go into the right brain and the left brain wanting to analyze everything, whereas the right brain wanting to stay.
Because some sort of trauma, whether it's, I don't know your experiences, and feel free to share if you want to, whether it's what I refer to, based on what Gabor Mate refers to when it comes to trauma, is capital T trauma, which might be severe abuse, war zone, real terror. Little t traumas, which might be not being seen or heard or loved, or some neglect, or some constant feeling of shame or not enoughness or unworthiness. So which one, what was coming up for you is probably most important to share.
I would probably say it's probably more of a little t, but because of what I'm feeling now, or in that moment when we're experiencing that, right? It's like, this is actually really holding me back. And so what happened when I did go through that memory, it was actually, I probably was around the age, I would say about 10-ish, playing under a slide with some school friends, doing some somersaults, and I must have touched someone, and they fell, hit their head, and all the blame came on me. And so I had my parents called into the office. I had the kids around us that were negatively experiencing the whole thing, even though there wasn't any malice from my end, right?
But it doesn't mean the shame story doesn't arrive, or that you feel, and I see shame as the fear of disconnection, that this is going to disconnect me in some way, this story I carry, from another. And in this case, the other 10-year-olds, that, and then that comes into friendships and not being included and all this sort of stuff that, Yeah. And what's really interesting is that I know in your left brain that that in that instance, you look at that 10-year-old self and she's not unworthy of love. She doesn't deserve neglect. Mm-hmm. She doesn't deserve of those children not including her in the next playful activity, And you could look at that 10-year-old girl or spend some time with her and tell her everything that she needed to hear in that moment. And that would be a very powerful thing that you could do. And so even though that playful exercise, or that exercise that was about finding play in your childhood experience and what those feelings were, prompted something that was traumatic for you, it also prompts the opportunity to meet that trauma with love.
Because you can sit with the parts, right? You can give it all, or I can sit with the parts, I can give it all the love that it needs, I can give it all the attention, tender care, whatever it needs, right? However, there is a point where that is not enough. There's a part of the brain that knows that this is what she deserved at that time, and it's okay to feel whatever feelings you're feeling, but to move through that then, and not have that as, another example I'll give you. I was probably a very tomboy growing up, right? And had a lot of comments about being ladylike, sitting with my legs crossed, just like really standard, I guess, ways of being in a feminine way, right? And every now and again, still, right, it comes into my mind, and I've sat with that part. I know in my brain that, that was whoever told me those things, they were going through their own processes. So I know that logically. However, there are times that I'm still stuck in that. So How can we move through that barrier that's still there?
Thank you for sharing that. Both these stories, thank you for sharing it. What it speaks to is something that I began talking about quite a lot, which is the inherent byplay and connection between a feeling of not enoughness and a feeling of a lack of safety within our own sense of self from a nervous system perspective. So we can do all the therapizing and, go through this model and that model and spend time in IFS and look at all the parts, and from a logical perspective, understand the self, meet the little self, understand that anger that I'm holding right now is actually just protecting that wound from my 7-year-old self or my 10-year-old self, and we can get it all. But if you don't feel safe within your body from a nervous system perspective, it's all just concept, analysis, perspective, intellectualization, conceptualization, and you can't integrate. So the work is from a nervous system perspective first, always, because when we feel safe in our own body, then we can actually integrate that work.
And
so how do we do that is the next question. And the easiest way to create physiological change and nervous system adaptation and regulation is through the breath. And that's why when I'm coaching, whether it's football players or corporates or entertainers or anyone who comes to me, high performance or just living their life, the first thing we deal with is the breath, because we can get into all the nooks and crannies of the self. But if we're dysregulated, none of it ever changes. We have no adaptation. We have no growth. We just keep going round and round in circles. And I think, a lot of therapy is very good at that. Let's go around and say, we'll come back to the mother. Oh, let's Freud this, and let's, and we just keep you in the therapy loop, and we keep charging you. Week after week after week, tap, 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 or every second week. No, we don't get change. You go, but I had a great conversation. I talk, and talk therapy is great. But if it's living within the body and within the nerves system, we've got to move into somatics as well. Yeah.
And it's really exciting that you brought that, because how I said during the start of the conversation that there were two things that came up. One of them was the authentic bliss. And the second part to that was a lot of the words that you were describing were high frequency, right? And or high vibration.
Yeah.
However, play can also be really gentle, right? Like we go to give like foreplay an example.
Yep.
Or
curiosity can be very gentle. I say curiosity is a form of play, just being curious, just being open. So I'll say that maybe not all of them are high frequency, because curiosity is not high frequency.
Yeah.
But it's open and spacious.
Yeah, and I guess I just wanted to reinforce that it doesn't have to be high physical.
No, that's why I say it doesn't have to be playing table tennis.
Yeah.
Or like going, like running and laughing and everything's silly and stupid. Like, it doesn't have to be you imitating being a child. However, if you think about those moments of what we did and a lot of it was around problem solving. Problem solving doesn't have to be high frequency either, but that is a state of play, just to problem solve. And sometimes that's just to sit and to work things out from a spacious place.
Ponder away.
That's something we don't do much these days. Too distracted to ponder.
Unless you're me.
One time we just sat by a tree and just pondered things for an hour or two. And that was our meditation. Yeah. Now we have to have someone counting numbers at us, and we have to lie down in a class and have a nice cozy blankie on us and a blindfold or whatever, an eye mask, and then we go, okay, now I can, sit in my pondering.
And like everything, it can go both ways, right? Like you can ponder and take no action, and then it kind of keeps you stuck in your body. So it's important to acknowledge that pondering and reflecting is really good.
Pondering spaciously, not pondering with judgment, pondering with curiosity, pondering from an open space, not I have to have the answer. But also, if it is under a tree, take your shoes off, put your feet on the ground, feel the earth and have a connection to it that is also going to regulate your nervous system. And so there's some two birds with one stone. Hear the bird songs, get lost in them for a while, Feel the wind on your face. Get lost in that for a while. And then come back to the thought that is troubling you or how you want to explore something differently. And at the time, this is what I call soul work, because a lot of us are in a big hurry to get the answers of how we can expand and evolve. And, society needs us to in this. very troubling times. But two, because we're in a rush with everything else, so we might as well rush our self-work. The soul is not an up and out thing. And so if it was, people would go to Burning Man, take a mushroom trip or acid or whatever, and it would be the greatest healing event of the world, and everyone would come out being the most expansive human possible, and these big souls come out. But it doesn't happen. So going up and fast really quickly doesn't work. The soul is not up and fast. It's slow and down. And so it involves a slowing down. Sitting there pondering under the tree, creating space for that, rather than doom scrolling again, and allowing you to yourself to hear some bird songs and some wind and the feeling of the grass on your feet. Just being with thoughts and allowing them to arise and land and leave and not getting too attached to them, and just the problem solves. Or your attachment to the problem changes. That's the real work. That's a part of the work.
And it goes back to that gentleness that you were talking about, right?
Yeah. And sometimes the gentleness can feel like shit because you don't know what it's like to fucking be still anymore. So you're like, oh, this is so uncomfortable. I'm just like sitting here and there's like wind and an ant crawling and bug crawled on my foot, and oh god, that bird, the magpie, they're going to swoop on me. Like all this sort of shit comes up. Oh, my knee hurts from the gym. Like all of that's good.
Mm-hmm.
All of that's a part of it. Because after a while, you go, why am I so fixated on a magpie swooping at me? Where does that negative bias come from? What's that about? Where else do I have negative biases? I run a lot to catastrophe, don't I? Why is that? What am I scared of? That's something to ponder. And in that, there's a slowing down, a stillness, and an expansion of one's own awareness itself. Shit, how am I projecting that scared, fearful version of myself out into the world? What would happen if I shifted that fear to something more loving? How would that work? Like all of these things start to arise within the self, but it involves a bit of stillness. It's slowing down, and not many people want to fucking do it.
That's right. And I guess moving on from there, right, and getting some answers as to what's that next step, but then it's about courage to take that next step.
Courage is a huge part of all of this, because there's nothing wrong with fear. Fear isn't sort of optional, is it? Like, we're all going to have fear because we all have, a reptilian brain, a brainstem. We all have an amygdala, and we all, we need fear, or else we'd just all be dead. But the courage to face our fears is optional. The courage to move through discomfort, to move through crisis, and all of those things that expand our resilience, but also expand our sense of self, expand our awareness, and ultimately expand our sense of, it does come from choosing to move through fear. It doesn't come from taking another step on easy street.
I wish it did.
If it did, we live in a world that is more comfortable than ever and more averse to discomfort than ever. And so I think that part of our training in life is to expose ourselves daily to discomfort in some way, consciously. So that's why I like things like, you can get into all the science around cold therapy or pushing yourself a little bit extra on cardio or whatever it is. That there's physical things, but they're mental and emotional too. I have to go through all the science of it, but it's boring. What's interesting is how that courageous act expands one's own sense of self, one's own resilience, one's own emotional capacity, one's own window for tolerance. That's actually what it is. And then how does that help you meet the world? And how does that help you become more loving in the world? That's what we're here to do. We're here to connect with everyone and everything in the most loving way possible. And all our shit gets in the way of it. That's the work.
Yeah, the work to build self-trust, I guess, so that you can show up in your authentic presence, right?
Well, what's love then? For me, love is, there's a beautiful quote in All About Love, Bell Hooks. Love is the willingness to nurture one's own or another's spiritual growth. And in that, for me, safety and trust must be a part of the space that is provided in order to nurture spiritual growth, because it requires so much courage, which means it requires so much vulnerability. Mm-hmm. So if there's no safety and trust, I don't want to be vulnerable because someone's going to fucking abuse me or weaponize that against me, So safety and trust in self, in environment, in other, it's a huge part. Huge part of it. But I do think that's what we're here to do. It is to love as fully and as freely with no conditions as possible. That's what makes the human experience so glorious.
I guess moving on to exploring this concept where they talk about adults get to relive their childhood when they either become parents or are surrounded with nieces and nephews. And I'd love to explore this with you a little bit more. It's interesting that we need an excuse to feel that joyful, authentic self. And so I guess my question to you is, many a times we'll have adults that will use, oh, you know, I was just having fun, or I was playing with my child, or I was doing this with my nephew, and kind of shift their experience to that little being, rather than just being, that actually felt so good and I don't need that child to do that. However, you know, we use that as an excuse. Like, I love going on swings, right? It's just a thrilling feel. Things like just brings me back into presence. My question is, why can't we just be in that playful state for ourselves? Why do we often, as adults, need that reasoning to be there?
Great question. Thank you for asking that question. So there's two things I want to share with this. One is the systemic nature of this predicament. That for the first part of our childhood experience, play was adventure, play was exploration, play was making mistakes, play was risking making mistakes, almost unconsciously knowing that in that mistake, I will find a solution. You know, I'll fall over that rock, that whatever it was. And I know that in future times, I'm not going to fall over that rock because I'm not going to try and, you know, hop, skip and jump through it, you know. And then we move into a system. And this is where we did all our learning, all our discovery. This is where our education came from. It came from play. And the connections that play built, we learnt about each other. The whole system was built around play, experimentation and everything that came with play. Think kindergarten, think all of it. Creativity, playing with colours, paints, and out in the garden, all of it. And then the system said, in order to learn, we need to put you in rows behind a piece of wood or metal on a seat, and we're going to hand you these books, and you're going to look at this white or blackboard. It's going to have chalk or pen, and this is how you're going to learn now. It's going to be dictated to you, and you're going to write it down. Sometimes you're going to mouth it back to me, and this rote system came in. And what's more, as we progressed through the years, we dictated which one was hard and which one was easy. And we said that if you choose the easy one, which involves play, music, drama, theatre, dance, art, we're going to mark you down when you hit your final years of school. And if you choose the subjects that are involved, that are connected to rote learning, where we dictate to you and you can spiel it back to us on a piece of paper, we'll mark you up. So the system got rid of the creative, playful element within us. The system said no. Now, whether the system did that consciously or unconsciously, you can go down conspiratorial paths, or you can just say that this was the easiest way to do it. But what it's killed off is the playful part of it. So we got taught how to unplay. And then research, you know, more modern research comes in and says, you know, a lack of play in our workspace, and that isn't bringing out the pool table at workspace, that is all the things that we talked about, what play can be to a person. A lack of play is akin or offers up the same results that are akin to a lack of sleep within an individual. Stress, chronic stress, anxiety, depression, burnout, because it is our most authentic state. So if we move away from it, it's going to destroy us. And all the science around play is that it increases dopamine. It increases oxytocin. It increases anandamide. Ananda, there's that word again. Even science uses that word now to describe our blissful hormones. You know, it increases endorphins. So all this increases serotonin, all the things that make us happy and blissful and joyful and chemically alive happen in play. And yet we put ourselves in a system where we said, you can't do it now, you can go and do it at recess. And that's how you play. But you don't play in the work. But where you do play in the work in theatre or in drama, no, you're going to mark that down. So what the fuck is that? So that's the system. Yes, that's one part. So we've got to really look at the system. One, maybe change, but also if you can't change it, change your relationship with it and change how you respond to it. Two, the other thing I want to explain is that feeling, that Ananda feeling, doesn't come from the external world. So you're saying playing with your nephew or your son or your daughter or niece, or that feeling it resides inside of you, yeah. And we've been in a system once again that is about getting everything from the extrinsic world. When I have the bigger house, the better car, you know, the more money, the more Insta followers, the more fame, the more success, the more wealth, whatever it is, the bigger bum, the bigger lips, like all of it, then I will feel the thing that I need to feel inside of me. It comes through external. But if we're reliant on that, if that governs our sense of feeling good, it's only ever a steroid. We get a jab from the 4-bedroom house for a while, but then we need the 5-bedroom house. We get a jab from the Merc for a while, but then we need the Maserati. Get the jab from, the size C tits, then we need double Ds. Like, it's never ever enough, because that's the nature of the not enoughness that's intrinsic within us. And so we need to shift the paradigm and go, hey, I own my enoughness. I own my feelings. I can be responsible for this state of ananda, for being playful. It doesn't rely on 6-year-old Jim to go out and play basketball with me in order to feel that. I know what play is to me. I've learnt that. I can bring that mindset because I've regulated my body and I feel safe within my body. I've done the work. I can bring that into my sticky spaces or my resistance spaces or my stagnant space within my life. So what I'm saying, this takes a real look at your life and a look at the system that's, that has been responsible as well for how you are. And it's also going, hey, that's not my fault, but it is my fault if I don't do anything about it.
So I guess if the system or the culture is that we're striving for all these external things to fit in, to belong, right?
The system's built on it. The system is built on inherent not enoughness. It's saying that you aren't enough. That's why every bit of marketing we have, and I talk about this, ad nauseum in my book, that every bit of marketing is saying that what you are, what you have isn't enough. And you're not enough until or unless you get this or have this. So it's constantly praying.
But we know that, right? Like we know.
We do that, but we know that, but we don't know it.
Exactly. And so that's where, I'm going with this. Like, we know that all these external successes of, whatever money in our bank, whatever expensive houses, whatever holidays, right, aren't going to really bring us that inner joy. Yet we strive for that.
Constantly. And it's not to say that those things aren't great. Like a holiday's great. A roof over your head's great, a car's great. They're all great things. But if they govern your sense of self-worth, then it's a trap. If it's I'm not enough unless I have these things, then it's a trap. If it's I feel enough and I want to live an abundant life and earn money and whatever, and I'm not attached to it, if it happens, it happens, it doesn't, blah, blah, then it's fine. Whatever. It's about how it governs your sense of self and your own sense of worth. And then we come back to safety. The reason you're doing that is to feel safe in this world. The reason you're doing that is to feel blissful in this world. But if you can feel safe in your own body without it, then who has the power? You've got all the power. If you can feel enough in your sense of self without that, then you've got the power. Then you're not relying on the system.
You're not relying on the system, but you can still create an abundant life for yourself with
if you want it. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's only limited by your own perception of what abundance is.
Yeah.
And then that's person specific, but it's infinite within possibility. Certainly within the plane of consciousness that you can imagine it up. And if our thoughts affect our feelings, and our feelings affect our actions, and our actions affect our relationships, and those affect our whole way in the world, then that imagination to dream something up has power. A lot of power.
And it's interesting how we know that all this external success isn't really going to bring us that inner joy, right? Because we know that from a lot of successful beings.
I really question that. I think you and I know that, but I think the majority of the world doesn't know that. I think we're in an absolute minority. And for me, it's come from having a lot of success and not feeling, still feeling empty in different ways.
And
that's
a lot
of people, they're still on the climbing the ladder journey, because that's what the system's telling me. I would say that 90+% of the world are like that.
Yeah, and I think you're completely right. However, going back to, I think it's easier for someone to say that when they've already been on that journey, because they've experienced that, and that's human nature, right? Like when we want to go and experience something, it's like you're wanting and you're striving, whatever it is, whether it's a holiday, like going away somewhere. And then once you've gotten there, it's like, that didn't feel as good as what I thought it might, right? Yep. So you've created all these things. And we also know that hustling and getting to success, and there isn't freedom of time, there isn't freedom of money, there isn't freedom of, all those amazing things that we try and get to get to that destination. The journey is not as great, right? However, we still go and do that because we want to experience that. So again, it comes back to, you're talking about the I am not enoughness part of it, right? But if we live in a world where that is valued and that's what you want to experience, because we can talk about contribution at the end of the day, right? The bigger and better things that you can do for someone else, you've got this drive. That's what we're striving for, right?
100%. And if you want to go down that path, well, that's the most loving path you can take. Path of service, so if we want to talk about that, you're trying to get to a space where it's just fully loving, well, then all you can do is serve. That's all you want to do. You just want to serve people, you want to feed people, and that doesn't have to be literally feed people, but you want to alleviate suffering in some way, even though you can't, but that's what the loving action is. It's the most loving thing you can do. But yeah, the not enoughness thing, I have no issue with people experiencing it. I have no issue with people going down the path of I'm going to try and get it all and success, because I think that's perfect. I think that's perfect for their karmic curriculum. They have to go through that. And they may or may not in this lifetime work out whether that is the true path. I know it's not for me, but they need to go through that experience. So I'm sharing all of this, knowing on the other side that if someone's listening and they don't agree with any of this, and they want to earn $1 billion because that's how they're going to feel worthy, then I'm like, that's perfect, because that's what they need in their curriculum this time around.
But that's the thing, right? Like that's where we get caught out. It's like, unless you haven't experienced that, unless you haven't experienced burnout, unless you haven't experienced health challenges, loss, whatever it is, you're then not going to know the cost of that.
And that's why we need to suffer. We have to. And that's when you realize that on the spiritual path, suffering is grace. That suffering is the most important part, because that's where all the lessons are learned. That is the discomfort. That is the crisis. Suffering is just a form of discomfort or crisis. So we need to learn. That's where the growth is. So you go, rather than going, I'm resistance to this suffering. This is, me, woe is me, I'm a victim. You go, thank you. Thank you. Suffering is my biggest teacher if I want to see my life through a lens of learning. Thank you. Thank you, suffering. Suffering is grace.
I guess to finish off, I wanted to touch on human potential and why play is really important, but you've already explored that with me. However, I want to finish off with your personal experience or thoughts on how we can incorporate play when we're climbing up the success ladder, and why it's so important to do that.
So, we haven't sort of shared it, but my success ladder is musical theatre. And I'm the only Aussie to play the Phantom in the Phantom of the Opera.
Oh yeah, tell us about your personal journey.
So that's my journey. Only Aussie to play the Phantom, the Phantom of the Opera, and Jean Valjean and Les Misérables on the West End. And so it's a highly competitive world musical theatre. It's very niche, but it's highly competitive, and these shows have been running for 40 years, so it says a bit for one Aussie ever to do that. So I was big on the success ladder, And
what drove that journey for you?
An obsession with the craft and a deep internal feeling of I'm not enough, love me, notice me, validate me, accept me, appreciate me, recognize me, all the things me, audience. So get out in front of an audience 8 times a week and get all the validation. And then when I got right into the work, it flips to how can I just be a conduit to serve something far bigger than me, something divine, pure love, and contribute and positively impact this audience. It's not about what I can get from the world, it's what I can give to the world, and that's so you just die into service, and boundaries become much stronger. I probably don't really do 8 shows a week anymore ever, because I just go, I can't do it without burning out over a long period of time. So but I still sing and perform and had great concerts last week, and that's my way of doing it. Get to work with wonderful people and collaborate and connect. It's beautiful. So music is wonderful. The biggest thing I've learned is that if you're not willing to get egg on your face, then you're not playful in a high performance, high successful environment. You must risk making mistakes. You must risk looking like a douchebag, being silly, being just getting it all wrong and fucking it up. Because when you were 3, that's how you learned. So it doesn't change when you're 43 or 53 or 63 or 33. You must risk that. And if you're so caught up in being perfect and getting it right every time, you are limiting your capacity and you're limiting your potentiality for something more, for something bigger. It comes from risking making the mistake. So risk it. That's the biggest thing.
Amazing. I love it. Couple of questions I want to finish off with. You talked about systems and culture. and we're talking about play, how would you like to see the future so that our systems and culture incorporates play as one of the most prioritized parts of our life? And what can we do about it on an individual level and a systemic level?
Inherently interconnected. I think we could use, because I've talked about this before, I think we could start really using AI in our favour. AI is going to have a lot of answers for us, you know. So rather than rejecting the fact that we can just get the answer in a second and compute it through, you know, it's replacing the left brain. But it doesn't replace the kinesthetic or experiential component of life. So rather than going, oh, what's this maths equation, and giving another Pythagoras or, you know, whatever, and learning something that you're never going to fucking use again unless, you know, whatever. We take maths out into the art. We take maths out of this linear desk space and we start problem solving really together in action. The equation becomes play because problem solving is play. I'd love to see much more of that. So it's going to change. So we stop using Heinemann, you know, as our sort of beacon of resource, and we start using each other. So I'd love to see that.
Yeah,
Just give maths an example. That's an example. Yeah. Because any of those kids can get the answers like that if they just chuck it into ChatGPT. So why diminish that? Why go, no, that's the only way to learn. We have to stop you from using that because that's stopping you from learning. No, learn another way, a way that ChatGPT could never learn.
Bringing your creativity, right? Your authentic creative parts.
Yep.
I love it. You talked about music and theatre being a big part of your world. At the moment, what is your favourite form of play?
Oh, it's the stage, for sure. Yeah, that's my method. That's been my method for awakening. That's my method for transcending ego. That's my method. That's the method I keep going back to. Some people go, I'm getting, you know, I need to expand. I know I'm going to have another psilocybin trip or whatever, and I've done plenty of them. But for me, it's about going, all right, let's get back up on stage and see how this stuff that I work on with everyone else, see how I'm working on it. And the stage is that. So I had some concerts last week, which were the music of Billy Joel, the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. And I've been in a very playful state and talking a lot about play. And some of the most proud I've been. Did I sing it perfectly? Blah, blah, make mistakes or whatever. Yeah, of course I did. And of course I didn't sing it perfectly, but I had the most, I took risks, I was spontaneous, I was out of the left brain at times, because I know the music, I don't have to work on the music, I know how to breathe, I know how to sing it. So what can I create here? And where does that one choice of creation take me to in the next phrase? And it was flow and fluid and fun and collaborative. And I had a couple of moments just, you know, sort of on stage during, you know, doing Piano Man to the last song. And so you don't really need to think about it. It's la, 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 like you just sort of, and I'm not singing it. I'm just doing some backing vocals. And I was just like, this is my life. You created this, Josh. You are both a visitor here and a creator here. And I just sat being in front of 2,200 people in this beaming state of immense gratitude for life.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Gratitude is just love in a derivative of love. So it was just beautiful and loving. So the stage is where I get to play.
Yeah. Awesome. Last one being someone who hasn't played in a very, very long time, can't even relate to that feeling of play. What would your recommendation be for them to tap into that?
Well, go back to an early childhood memory, really sit with that, of playing. And whether that's kicking the soccer ball on the beach or whether that's, you know, getting out the butcher's paper and doing finger paints on it and whatever that was to you.
What if there are no memories? What if
there are zero memories?
Yeah.
If you have zero memories ever, imagine it. Imagine what it'd be like to do it. Because really a memory is just, you know, a vision of the past bringing into the present. So it's just an imagination is just a vision that you're conjuring up. Either way, you're conjuring it up to some degree. So imagine it. And then think about how you'd feel. What would it feel like to get some greens and blues and yellows and finger paint all over that and have no cares about whether it's good or bad or, you know, not criticizing it. The left brain is off. Bye-bye. Just exploring it. What would that feel like?
Yeah, I love it.
And pick 3 to 4 words or 5 words that come up in your feelings. Did you feel creative? Did you feel free? Did you feel silly? What were they? And then find the points in your life that have the most resistance and bring those words, that mindset into it.
Oh, that's powerful. Thank you so much, Josh. If people want to find out a little bit more about you, how can they find you?
Yep, they can. Instagram's the easiest way, either at Josh Piterman, but most of this sort of stuff is at Behind the Mask coaching. And grab a copy of the Behind the Mask book. You can get it at all major and minor bookstores.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Well, this is where your journey of exploration continues. Please subscribe to the Lifeability podcast so that you can stay tuned when new episodes come online. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. The mission at Lifeability is to inspire you to create a more fulfilling life for yourself and improve your quality of life. So why not share this podcast with your loved ones and create a ripple effect together? Until next time, Asante Sana.